How's it going, guys? We got a new Chaos Zero Nightmare patch, and with it comes some new endgame content. So, before you jump in blindly and wonder where Tressa's card went, take a seat as we cover it all. We will be going through the mechanics of the first and second halves, viable characters, updates to scoring, and neutral cards that you might want to be on the lookout for in the Chaos. So, if you're curious about how to hit that 500k mark, be sure to stick around for some information that could help you get there. First, with what hasn't changed, similar to the previous Great Rift, this fight will have two halves, with the first half having a maximum of 10 turns. Up to 5 unused turns will be carried over to the second half. So, the faster you clear, the more turns you will have to pump up for your score in the second half. After clearing the previous Great Rift for the weekly missions, we should all be pretty familiar with this by now. The boss in the first half is weak to void damage, and your job will be simple. Hit the boss as many times as possible. This boss has a membrane status effect, which reduces the damage dealt to it by 30% until it's removed, as well as the ability to apply thirst to itself, which reduces the damage taken by 10% per stack. Each hit dealt to the boss removes one stack of these effects, so combatants that deal a lot of hits will be able to clear that damage reduction faster and thus deal more damage. And when you need to dish out a lot of hints, everyone should know by now how powerful of a character Tressa is. As a free 4-star that dominated Side 2 in the previous Great Rift, she will be a shoe-in for Side 1 against a void weak enemy. Pair her up with Cassius, Hugo, Ray, or even Chizuru, and you have a recipe for success in the works. This boss will also force a status ailment card called Substitute into your draw pile at the start of each turn, increasing its damage by 5% per copy present in your deck. Substitute is a 2-cost card with exhaust and no base effect. However, it does have Inspiration. Inspiration is a bonus effect that is activated when the particular card is drawn through an ability. Think of a card like Rally or Gearbag, or an ego skill like the one that the partner Yuri provides. If this card has Inspiration activated, its cost is reduced by 2 and will allow you to draw 1 card by playing it during that turn. So, having a combatant like Cassius, Nia, or someone who saves data is just loaded up with draw-based common cards, it will help keep your deck unclogged if you find this effect holding you back. Later in the fight, the boss will try to use True Liberation, which is an attack that will do a massive damage to your team. This attack, however, is tied to a status effect called Destructive Urge, which, when removed, changes the boss's intention to a weak action. Just like earlier status conditions, Destructive Urge is also removed by hitting the boss a certain amount of times. So, fielding a team that can deal a lot of hits not only lets you deal damage, but also mitigate it as well. But, clearing Destructive Urge comes with an additional effect. Your current hand is shuffled into the draw pile, and you draw 5 new cards while replenishing your AP. This card draw can be harmful or beneficial to you depending on your situation, so just be aware of your AP usage and what cards you might not see for another turn. But overall, Side 1 is still flexible. The majority of your points scored will come from Side 2, so for the first half, your only goal is to get through it in 5 turns, which many characters should be able to do. Though not a void unit, Mei Lin dishes out a lot of hits and is able to quickly get through the damage reduction and put up decent numbers. The boss does have Elasticity, which decreases damage from targeting attack cards, dealing more than 7 hits at one time, but she is certainly still a viable option. So feel free to use whatever you like to bring down the first half, but if you're hoping to save Tressa for the second half, you'll be in for a rough time. The mechanics for the second half, which we will get into in just a second, are practically built to counter her and the build around the Shadow Reload upgrade card that dominated the previous Great Rift. Going into the second half, it's important to note that not only is it weak to instant damage, but the way scoring works has been changed from the previous Great Rift. This change also happened in the first half, but we will find it more relevant here. Your score is now increased by the amount of damage dealt, with scoring from healing and shielding being removed. This counters the previous self-harm meta, using cards like Glorious Resistance whilst also capping the value of the abundant healing that takes place in Tressa's build. But this is far from all the indirect nerfs that she received, and unfortunately, Hugo got caught in the crossfire with this next one. You'll see that when the battle begins, all but one copy of upgrade cards with the same name will be removed from your deck, and the remaining cards will have unique applied to them. Basically, all of those decks which relied on copies of Upgrade Epiphany of Shadow Reload are destroyed. Now, you only get one copy, meaning that you only get one Shadow Dagger per heal. To take it a step further, the boss comes with the status Infection. What this means is that when a combatant uses a heal card, status element cards are forced into your draw pile and the boss cleanses its own debuff, which, yes, includes Agony. So, the Tressa build that was so dominant is well and truly put out to dry in this fight. The devs were clearly unhappy with that one. In fact, this means that all healing periods should be avoided when possible. The second half is largely a DPS check, and you should bring a team that will allow you for your maximum damage output instead. You'll want your main DPS and then 1 or 2 sub DPSs depending on your comfortability and reliance on draw. The boss largely does very little damage to your team provided that you can handle all of the mechanics that it brings to the table. The second half carries over some mechanics from the first, but with some changes. The boss still has mucus membrane, but rather than it being removed by hitting the boss, it is removed by ravaging it. To make accomplishing this even more difficult, at the start of each turn, the boss will recover 20% of its tenacity bar. For combatants not designed with this content in mind, every turn will be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. At the start of each turn, the boss will also create 1 counterfeit status ailment card into your draw pile. At the time of this recording, the tooltip actually incorrectly calls it Substitute, the name of the card created in the first half, but it works slightly differently. Similar to Substitute, it's a 2 cost draw with 1 card, but you will notice that the inspiration effect is gone. Instead of lowering their cost by drawing the card, each time that you succeed in ravaging the boss, the cost of the counterfeit will decrease by 1. For each counterfeit in your deck, the boss's damage increases by 5%. Ravage is the name of the game in the second half. Sereniel is the new shiny new unit, and the developers have also doubled down by kindly putting in some additional buffs for our instinct damage in the Great Rift. On Ravage, 50% damage amount is added to the instinct card for the battle, once per turn, up to a maximum of 10 times. This, of course, increases her damage drastically over the course of the battle, but it's worth noting that it also works for Cassius as well. Sereniel plays a lot of zero-cost cards due to her creation of the attack card Homing Laser L and its ability to move to hand on Ravage. This directly plays into Cassius' quest 000 and allows him to scale nicely through the fight if you build him as a damage dealer and have a strong enough first half to save him for the second. Now, if you're struggling to ravage the boss every turn, these counterfeit cards can really start to get in the way. That's why a combatant like Veronica can be really useful here with her skill Repose, which specifically draws cards belong to other combatants. Cassius, who's able to draw any specific card with the Joker or place them on top of the deck with some epiphanies from shuffle, or even common card attack. If you can't frequently exhaust these cards, you should instead be looking for ways to avoid them. In the second half, the boss will again try to use the attack True Liberation, which you can once again avoid by removing the destructive urge. But similar to Mucus Membrane, it is no longer removed by performing a set number of hits, but instead by ravaging the boss. When you do this successfully, once again, the cards in your hand will be shuffled into the draw pile and you will draw 5 more. But something worth noting is that the boss's tenacity bar refills at this time as well, meaning that you can get 2 breaks in 1 turn. If you find yourself in this situation with plenty of cards that can get your first break, try to use the bare minimum to do it. Then the rest of your cards will go back into the draw pile and you'll have a chance to draw them again. As far as viable characters go, as previously mentioned, this fight is clearly designed around Sereniel, our first seasonal 5-star combatant. If you're running her, even at E0, you should have no issues clearing the second half. If you're trying to not bring her in, then options will be quite tight compared to side 1 due to how challenging it is to ravage when the boss is consistently regenerating its tenacity. For the top alternative, I would once again draw your attention towards Mei Lin. The elasticity buff on the boss is still present in the second half, but the number of attacks she puts out makes her still quite useful at ravaging the enemy. Not something that many characters are good yet, especially given the circumstances of the fight. If the extra damage from discarding Renoa's third bullets deal tenacity damage, there might be something there, but unfortunately it does not. Mei Lin plus Veronica or Selena are very viable for this fight and can pull you through the second half when built. If you're curious about the setups for the teams used in this video, let's get to the fun part and quickly hover over the builds. The team compositions used in this video are certainly not optimal. These are just here to showcase free supportive options and how easily certain characters can handle the content. The Sereniel used this Great Rift run is E0 running the 3-star Yuri partner. And as you can see, she has very little investment with most of her potential nodes still being locked. The saved data that was used for her was from the very first Chaos run that she was used in on this account and is only valued at 40 points. Despite that, she comfortably lasted all 10 turns to hit the 500k mark. In fact, all of these characters have been extremely underinvested in potential, level, and memory fragment wise to showcase just that. Tressa's build is around her attack and damage over time stats, while everyone else is purely support. As I said, survival is not really an issue here if you can handle the mechanics the bosses throw at you. If you bring in alternative options that don't interact with them well, there is still so much leeway to boost your survivability. Invest in the combatants that you do have, clean up their save data by removing the cards that only clog your deck and waste precious turns. Some of these characters desperately need that, and pay attention to ever-changing status effects. And with that, we have come to the end of today's Chaos Zero Nightmare video. I hope that this breakdown was helpful and provided you a better understanding of how to tackle this endgame content, as well as giving you a little more confidence in your own teams. If you found this guide helpful, feel free to stick around for more ZZN and other guide content. I'm Rue, and I'll see you next time.